Welcome everyone. I'm Councillor Susie Horton. I'm the Chair of Planning. Excuse me for the croaky voice today, but I think I'm suitably distanced from everyone, so I shouldn't share my germs. A bit of housekeeping to start off with. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room. There's no one in the public gallery. Don't use the lifts, and assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. And if you did sign in, please sign out for the Guildhall's records. The meeting will be webcast to allow the public to watch remotely if they wish. Everyone speaking via microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations. Public seating is not on camera, but members of the press and public have permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. And can everyone speaking use the microphones, and also remember to switch them off when you have finished. When it comes to voting, please can members keep their hands raised clearly until the number of votes have been stated. Okay, so I am going to go on to introductions. I'm going to introduce people in the room who will be speaking. I know that some people are not sitting in the balcony, but they're in on the floor here, and that's very welcome. But I won't introduce every single person. So I will start by introducing the councillors. So I'll start here.
My name is Judith Smythe. I'm a councillor of St Jude's Ward, and I'm Vice Chair of this committee.
Mary Vallely, councillor for Cosham and Wimmering.
Councillor Russell Simpson, Hillsey Ward.
Good morning, Chair. Councillor Matthew Cordy, member for Hillsey.
Councillor Peter Candlish, councillor for Eastney and Craneswater.
Councillor Hugh Mason.
So I'm Councillor Lee Hunt, and I cover Nelson Ward, along with two other colleagues, and that's Damshaw, Tipner, North End and Buckland.
Welcome, members. I'm now going to go to officers if they could introduce themselves, please. Starting here.
Morning, Chair. David Hodges, Head of Development Management.
Eva Kasperczak, Planning Officer.
Sam Kushner, Planning Officer.
Alison Harper, Local Democracy Officer.
Okay. And finally, last but not least, people doing deputations today. I'm going to start at the back.
You do have a lawyer here.
Oh, I am so sorry.
That's okay. I'm Juliet Gill. I'm the Principal Planning Solicitor at Portsmouth City
Sorry,
Council.
Juliet.
That's all right. No worries.
Thank you, Councillor Mason.
Morning, Chair. Councillor Dorrington doing a dissertation on 47 Whitwell Road.
Okay, welcome.
Peter Brook doing a deputation on 47 Whitwell Road.
Thank you, welcome. I think the other four people are not doing deputations, so if I come to the row in front, hello, sir.
I'm the applicant, Mehul Shukal, doing the deputation.
Welcome. And two people on my right.
Steve Brazier, Castle Road Community Association, on the Castle Road deputation.
Welcome, everyone. I think I've covered everyone now. Excellent. So the first item for me is apologies for absence. I've got apologies from Councillor Chris Atwell, Councillor Derek North, and I understand also Councillor Chris Dyke.
Yeah, I was about to say, he did actually ask me to give his apologies. I'm sorry.
Okay, so welcome Councillor Simpson, who is deputising for Councillor Chris Dyke today. Councillor Lee Hunt.
Yeah, thank you. Terribly sorry, but my mother-in-law's being discharged at 12:30 today. I'm going to become a carer, so I need to leave and go and pick her up at 12:30 exactly. Right, leave here at 12:30 exactly.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's it looks like there's a planning application coming that I'll be in the middle of, I'll just leave before that, if that's all right.
Okay,
Much
thank
obliged.
you for letting me know.
Thank you very much. Sorry about everyone.
And I understand that Councillor Candlish has to also leave at around about the same time, if not earlier.
Actually, slightly later, but yes, I will have to leave to take someone to a medical matter.
Okay, thank you. Any other apologies? No. Okay, so next item is declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declarations of interest? I think there might be some today. Councillor Smythe.
Just to say that unusually, we're all colleagues of Councillor George Fielding. I don't have any personal interest or prejudicial interest, but normally when we have applications from members, people who work in the council, we're not actually in the same team, but this time we are.
Councillor Vallely.
Same for me.
Same for you. Anyone else got a declaration on that particular item? I think I would also declare an interest because I am one of the 3 councillors in that ward and the application is for the ward. I don't know whether it goes as far as personal, but it's definitely not prejudicial. So I've taken advice on that.
Chair,
Okay. Yes.
I have a similar thing to say about the first application as well. It's in my ward. I know some of the people and have spoken to them because they asked for advice about how they should be interacting with the planning department.
Can I just check, did you actually discuss the planning application with them, or was it just the process?
I've always focused on the process of the application, what they have to do to be able to make a deputation here or to put objections or comments into the system.
Okay, I don't think that would be considered to be bias or appearance of bias then if it's just about the process.
Thank you. And also on that item, I think I need to highlight that I'm not quite, again, sure it's personal, but definitely not prejudicial interest. And I seem to know a lot of people who live on Whitwell Road, either family, friends or acquaintances, including someone who's doing a deputation. But I'm absolutely sure that I will come into this with an open mind and that it won't be prejudicial. Councillor Hunt.
On the same grounds, then, I need to declare, and all of us, the Liberal Democrats do, a personal interest, but non-prejudicial.
Okay. Right, is that done? It's not normally such a long item on the declaration of interests. Okay then, so I think the next item is item 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of July. Is there anyone happy to propose that these are accurate? Councillor Hugh Mason, are you happy to second, Councillor Hunt? Yeah. Okay, so we can agree those minutes. And now we go on to the first substantial item on the agenda, which is 47 Whitwell Road. Just to say that the procedure for this is normally that the officer will make a presentation, then we go to deputations. Just hoping it's an agreement with people that we normally have the councillor, if there's a councillor doing a deputation, they normally go last. But Councillor Nick Dorrington has requested that he goes first because he has a funeral to attend to, so I'm assuming that we would be in agreement with that committee. Okay. Okay, then let's push on with the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this is a change of use from dwelling house to a 7-bed, 9-person house and multiple occupation application. And before we go through the substantive application, I'd just like to take you through supplementary matters that will come up. There is an addition to the development description included. So installation of 2 roof lights on the side roof slope is added to the development description since the publication of the agenda last week. There's also been a change to a HMO data account that I will cover later in the presentation. So no external alteration, the application site is a semi-detached property on the northern side of the street. The application property is within Eastney and Cranes Water Conservation Area. No external alterations are being proposed to the front elevation. However, 2 roof lights are proposed on the side roof slope, and this would require planning permission because they are clear glazed. They have been in the plans from the beginning, they just haven't been included in the development description. The property is set back from the road and has a front garden defined by a red brick wall that you could see in the previous picture. There is no driveway, as you can see in the site plans. The proposed site plan on the left, existing site plan on the right. And also from the site plan, you can see there are 11 bike spaces being proposed and bin storage in the rear garden, access by a secure gate. It should be noted that the applicants are only required to provide 4 bicycle spaces as per our guidelines. Next slide, please. In terms of mixed and balanced communities, the property is well, the application site is well below the 10% threshold. So the change that was added since the publication of the report is that properties on Granada Road to the south haven't been initially included. Now they have been included. There are numerous flats there. That's why the number has changed. But it's still within 5.6% if the application was to be approved. As set out in the report, the external alterations proposed would not require planning permission except for the 2 roof lights on the side elevation. You can see various alterations on the ground floor level. These would not require planning permission. There's also a chimney going to be removed. That also doesn't require planning permission. And there have been similar examples along the road where chimneys have been removed. Okay. Now, sections. As you can see, that currently the property is a 5-bedroom house. And some internal reconfigurations will be required to accommodate an additional bedroom. So on the top floor, you can see this bedroom 7 that's going to be created from scratch, if you like. But the ceiling height in that bedroom is 2.3 meters, with the lowest part being at 1.9 meters. So this would comply with our standards. And no planning permissions required for that, of course, because it's just internal reconfigurations and it's not a listed building. So here you can see the existing plans. It's a 5-bedroom dwelling house, as I've mentioned, has a kitchen, living room, dining room on the ground floor, some storage space in the basement. Yeah, that's it, I think. And in terms of the proposed layout, it would include 7 bedrooms with ensuite shower rooms. Bedroom 4 and bedroom 5 would be the double occupancy bedrooms. The TV room that was initially included in the basement has been changed into a storeroom because that was in response to the Environment Agency's comments that basement shouldn't be used for habitable uses. There is still a utility room there that will accommodate laundry facilities. Communal living space and kitchen would be 26 square meters, which complies with your standards. And I think overall the application complies with all of your policies and can be recommended for permission, subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. So I'll now move on to deputations, and I'll start with Councillor Nick Dorrington. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. I do so in my capacity as a local ward councillor for Eastney and Craneswater, and more importantly, as a representative of the residents of Whitbrow Road, who have asked me to share their views and concerns regarding this application. The proposal before you seeks to convert 47 Whitwell Road from a single-family dwelling, Class C3, into a 7-bed, 9-person house in multiple occupancy, HMO. While the technicalities of planning law are important, I believe it is equally important to consider the lived experience of those who call this street their home. Whitwell Road is a street of character and charm. It is lined with well-maintained Victorian properties, many of which have stood for over 120 years. During the recent site visit, I had the privilege of meeting several of the residents and seeing for first hand the pride that they take in their homes and gardens. There is a tangible sense of community here, one built on mutual respect for neighbourly less, and sharing the appreciation of perfect, peaceful, family-friendly environments that they've cultivated. It is important to note that the residents I spoke to are not opposed to HMOs in principle. In fact, several already live adjacent to or opposite existing HMOs and reported no incidences or issues with the tenants. One resident who directly borders on 3 sides by HMOs, if this application were approved, expressed no objection to people living in these properties. His concern lies not with who might live there, but with the scale and suitability of long-term impact of this particular proposal. The application incorrectly claims that off-street parking is already available. In reality, there is only pedestrian access to the front of the property. The proposal to pave over the front garden and create a hard standing not only removes valuable green space, but also contradicts Portsmouth's green strategy. This strategy encourages the preservation of front gardens and discourages hard surfaces, which contribute to the increased surface water runoff and a growing issue already overburdened in our drainage systems. The rear of the garden, although currently overgrown, is a small but significant haven for wildlife in an urban environment like Southsea. Those garden pockets are vital for the biodiversity and climate resilience. Removing them for development would be a step back in our environmental commitment. Over the past few years, Whitwell Road has seen a number of former care homes, nursing homes and small hotels converted back into family homes. This trend speaks volumes about the demand for traditional family housing in this area. These restored properties have brought new life to the street and have helped maintain a balanced and residential character that resides so valuable and so deeply to people. Approving this application would represent a shift away from that trend. It risks tipping the balance towards intensifying occupancy and transient living arrangements, which may not align with long-term needs of the community. The Environment Agency has ruled that the basement of the property is not suitable for habitation due to flood risk of waters over 3 metres deep. This is a serious concern. While the application suggests that a flood risk assessment is not necessary due to this classification of changing from a C3 to a C4, I would respectfully challenge that interpretation. There is a clear difference in risk in usage between a living room and a bedroom. Bedrooms are spaces where people sleep, often unaware of their surroundings and therefore more vulnerable to the event of flooding. I believe a full flood risk report should be required to ensure the safety and suitability of the proposed layout, not just for compliance, but for well-being in the future. Safety and space standards. The proposal for communal living space is listed at 24 square metres. However, once essential kitchen units and required storage are accounted for, the usable space drops down to 19.4 square metres. This falls significantly below Portsmouth City Council's minimum standards for property of the size of this occupancy. Furthermore, bedroom 7 is a serious fire and safety concern. Although it is generously sized, it is sunken by 1.9 metres below the base of its only window. This makes the window inaccessible as means of fire escape in the event of a fire. Additionally, the window does not meet the required size standards for natural light and ventilation, falling short of the 1/20th of the floor area standard. These are not minor technicalities, they are fundamental issues of safety and habitability. Chair and members, I want to reiterate that this is not a blanket objection to HMOs or to developments in general. While the residents of Whitwell Road are open-minded and pragmatic, they understand the need of housing and diversity and are not opposed to change, but they also care deeply about the character, safety and suitability of their street. This application in its current form raises multiple material concerns, from the environmental impact and flood risk to space standards and fire safety concerns. does not, in my view, represent a responsible or appropriate use of this property. I respectfully urge the committee to consider these points carefully and to weigh the long-term implications on the community. I hope I have been able to offer a fair and honest appraisal on behalf of the residents of Rickwell Road. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Dorrington. Spot on 6 minutes. I understand that you have to leave straight away, but I'm sure you will be informed of the outcome. Thank you. Okay, so I'll now move on to Peter Brook, who's objecting. You have up to 6 minutes, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and committee members for allowing me to speak today. I've been a resident of Whitwell Road for 16 years, and I'm representing the immediately affected neighbours who cannot be here today. The weight of feeling on the street can be seen by the 43 objections lodged, which I hope that officers and members have had time to read. We're in a conservation area, as our houses date from the turn of the last century and are fine 3-storey properties, semi-detached and terraced, with many distinctive and impressive features. But only 4 houses on Whitwell Road have this design of roof space, and none of these 4 have converted the loft to a bedroom, let alone a bedsit, or added a roof light at the side, which is proposed for bedroom 7. Number 47 has stood out on our road for the past 5 years as an eyesore that has been left empty by the current owner for 5 years and allowed to fall into great neglect, causing risk and damage to neighbours. Policy PCS 20 of the Portsmouth Plan states that new HMOs will only be permitted where the new HMO would not create an imbalance. I believe it would. This area at the east end of Whitwell Road already has a broad mix of houses, flats and HMOs, and we're happy to have a diverse neighbourhood. But the terrace directly opposite the proposed HMO, from number 54 to number 68, comprises 8 houses but 23 separate households, as half the houses directly opposite number 47 are already subdivided into HMOs and flats. This congestion is already causing great pressure on amenity, parking and services. The 100-year-old sewage system was not designed to cope with this number of separate households in what were originally built as single-family residences. And this committee should be aware that residents in this part of Whitwell Road and Granada Road already complain about strong sewage smells and the dip in the road above the sewer. This will only worsen if the occupancy of number 47 is permitted by members today to increase from a single family to 9 adults with 7 separate showers and 7 toilets, creating yet more pressure on a creaking sewage system. And I note that the SPA report on biodiversity impact is still required 7 months after the application was lodged. Members will also see from the map that was shown earlier that the proposed HMO is close to a blind corner, a blind and already very congested corner of Whitwell Road. The road safety risks are a material consideration for the committee, along with parking pressures, especially for disabled residents, one of whom has told me she will have to walk even further from her car to her home, as this HMO will not have any off-road parking. Turning to the specific conservation area issues, firstly, the removal of the side chimney stack I believe would be detrimental to the external appearance of the property and also affect the external symmetry, as number 49 next door still has its side chimney stack. Secondly, the clear glazed roof light on the eastern roof slope would be out of keeping with the other properties of this roof design on the street. And thirdly, any potential structural alterations to the street frontage should be ruled out. The front wall that you would have seen on the photograph, original pillars and the distinctive mosaic pathway need to be preserved as a condition of any development. And I would ask members to ensure that any changes in a conservation area should enhance the character and make it better, not worse, and that the conservation area officer should visit the house before any approval is given. The paper states in paragraph 810 that no properties will be sandwiched between HMOs, but that is not true for the young family who live at number 45 or the family at number 49. They cannot be here today, but are very worried by this proposal. In addition to the terrace immediately opposite them, with 2 confirmed HMOs and 23 households in 8 properties, they have 14 households in the 2 properties adjoining their back gardens. That's number 3 and 5 Nettlecombe Avenue. And you can see from the HMO map that was shown earlier that number 49 is sandwiched by an HMO behind and opposite them, in addition to the proposed HMO next door. Next, space standards. Councillor Dorrington's already referred to that, but throughout the process it has been unclear which space standards and guidance apply to the application. In the report, the 2018 HMO guidance is used alongside the 2022 standards to allow for a smaller combined living space than the latest standards would require. This has caused confusion among neighbours and needs to be clarified. As already mentioned, bedroom 7 would have insufficient lights given the design of the roof space in this house. Turning to flood risk and the Environment Agency letter dated the 18th of June, the basement with the increased flood risk identified cannot be counted as habitable space. The combined living space provided by the kitchen does not meet the standards required after allowing for essential kitchen units. This is a material issue, along with the use of the ground floor as bedrooms, ground floor rooms as bedrooms, which is highlighted on page 2 of the Environment Agency letter as a particularly important consideration arising from the increased flood risk. And mitigation issues on this arising from that EA letter must be clearly reported to this committee. Turning to waste, there may be storage space for waste bins at the rear, but on bin days there will be up to six or seven more black and green bins cluttering the pavement, with no space at the front, as the planning permission to widen the narrow front entrance lapsed a few years ago. Whitwell Road is already a mixed and balanced community. It's a well-kept, community-oriented street where neighbours look out for each other and where it is safe for children and grandchildren to play. This proposal will create an imbalance and would go against the trend of single-family occupancy that has been very evident in the past 15 years. The vast majority of residents on our street are asking you to refuse planning permission to the HMO proposal before you today.
Thank you, Peter. And again, spot on with the timing. Almost like you practiced it for 6 minutes. Thank you so much for doing that deputation. Okay, there's no more deputations on this particular item. So, members, over to you. Could we go with questions first, please? Councillor Hugh Mason.
I think the question which was raised by Councillor Dorrington concerning the size of the windows, certainly on the plan they look precious small, and he suggests they do not meet our standards or building standards. Can I have an advice on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So in the HMO guidance, there's no specific guidance about window sizes. Now, that's a matter for building regs. There is, under the building regulations, a requirement about the size of aperture to the floor space calculations, which I believe was given in the deputation. But that will be a matter addressed by building regs at that stage.
Councillor Hunt.
Can I please ask about the conservation area? So we're seeing here a proposal that seeks to remove a Victorian tiled path, Victorian walls, bricks, pillars. No, that's the question. So all right. So the front garden is going to go. So the garden will be paved over or not?
So could we go back to the site plan? There were a couple of amendments made during the course of the application, and initially the existing site plan showed that there was a driveway, which was not true because the permission was not implemented. During the course of the application, we've received the amended drawings, and these are the ones that are subject to this application. There is currently a path, a brick wall to the front of the property, a front garden, and the proposed site plan is exactly the same in terms of the frontage of the property.
So great. I read it last night in bed and I wondered what was going on. So because I read it last night and I was a bit confused. So I'm glad we cleared that up. Secondly then, so all the front garden remains at all, so the resident can be assured everything remains as is right now.
Chair, there's only so much that we have control over.
I get that.
But there's no proposal to create the parking space shown.
Oh, right, okie doke. So there's no parking proposed with this on site at all? No, good. The second question is then about the alignment, the conservation area, and the shape of the roofs, and the removal of the chimney stack, which is really important. The question I want to ask, and I do beg your pardon, if I could refer you to page 12. And it's at 3.5. And thank you for your report, by the way. Baptism of fire here this morning, I think. Yeah. So at 3.5, it says, it is noted the removal of the chimney stack is regrettable. May I ask why that was put in? That word, that short sentence. Why is it regrettable?
Because it's a historic feature of the building, but it's one that we can't control its removal of.
But this is a conservation area over which we can take a view of these sorts of things. Is that correct?
Not if it doesn't require planning permission, no. If it's not under your control, it shouldn't have weight in your deliberations.
So visual amenities don't matter anymore? Hang on. Visual amenities, they don't matter anymore, particularly in a conservation areas. Is that correct?
What you need to have regard to is an applicant's fallback position. So if they can do it, irrespective of whether they've applied for a HMO, if tomorrow they can remove that chimney because there's nothing to prevent that removal of the chimney, then they can do that. So you need to ensure that you're not attaching weight to something that they can do anyway. So it's not a factor of the planning application. So if you attach weight to that, that's problematic.
I very much understand that, and I'm not nearly as knowledgeable as you, but I have been around this a lot, and I've seen things rejected because of the visual amenities and so on. So the other thing I wanted to ask about was, if you don't mind, going to page, where's he gone? Again, page 12. It says here on the highways team, it says no objection. Whitwell Road is formed of residential properties, which is operating at 100.42 capacity. So I guess from the report then that the parking is already oversubscribed in that area. Would that be correct?
Well, we're taking the advice that's given by the Highways Authority about the number of people who have permits against the on-road capacity in there. That's their advice to us.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed for that clarification. And then it says on page 19, the Highways and Parking team, I'm sure you'll agree with them, says that it is considered that a refusal on lack of parking is not reasonable or defendable. So do you agree with them on that? Because if somebody came along and made a decision to move a proposal to refuse it on the grounds it's oversubscribed already in the addition of extra cars, would you support the Highways team when they say that it's considered that a refusal on a lack of parking is not reasonable or defendable? That's my question.
Yes, I mean, that's why we've set it out in the report, Chair, because the parking standard for the 5-bed house is the same as for the proposed HMO. So under our adopted guidance, what we've said is we've got a parking standard for a C3 house of this size and a parking standard for a HMO of this size, and they're exactly the same. So in terms of demonstrating an additional demand from the proposed development, we would struggle to do that. That's why our recommendation is in there.
All right, and one last question, Chair, then I'll stop. May I ask, if you're used to this sort of thing now, if an area is already oversubscribed with parking permits, do they get given, when it's over 100%, do they get given parking permits already, or do we say they can't have any?
Chair, that's a matter for the parking team in terms of how they operate the residents' parking permits. So we're not in a position to change that today. That's a matter for parking.
Indeed. That ends my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Cordy.
Thank Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple of questions about the roof lights, if I may. Will they be viewable from the road? And because the property sits within a conservation area, do they have stricter requirements put on them? And thirdly and finally, can you guarantee that the roof lights will provide sufficient daylight for bedroom number 7? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the first question is, can they be viewed in the street? So the roof lights sit on this plane of the roof, so it's this side elevation, not this elevation that you see from them, but it's that side elevation there. So no, is the short answer. You wouldn't be able to see those within the public realm. The second question, I think, was about standards for appearance on the... Yeah, answer is no. So under the permitted development regulations, there's no difference between a property in a conservation area against a property not where it's just roof lights. The difference is where you do a roof extension, so a dormer and the like. There are different rules in that regard, so that's part B. But part C, where just any other alteration to the roof, which includes a roof light, doesn't have specific rules for conservation areas. And sorry, your final question.
The third question was just regarding room 7. It obviously hasn't got any windows in there, but you've got a couple of roof lights. I was wondering if how you've measured that that's going to guarantee enough daylight for the resident living in that room.
If I just go back to, if you can see on here, so this is north, so it's east facing, so morning daylight comes over into that room, and then as the sun passes over this way to the south, so it will pick up morning and into afternoon light, and then just in terms of outlook, so let's just go, so it's this room here, so it's a room in 2 parts, so it's very faint, but this is where one of the roof lights is, so it's over the corridor into the ensuite. There's a space there for wardrobe in there and for storage for the occupier, and also then I'm struggling to see myself with all the lines on this page. It's approximately in this location here is where the additional roof light would be. And yes, it's not unusual to have loft conversions and roof rooms served by roof lights. And bearing in mind it's an east facing, we're satisfied with the light and relative outlook from that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Canlis.
So I had a few questions, and just going back to the conservation area, I understood that in conservation areas there was an overwhelming presumption that something had to preserve or enhance the conservation area for it to be permitted.
That's a statutory test when you're dealing with a planning application. That's different where you are allowed to do certain works under the permitted development regulations and what's called Article 2.3 land, which includes conservation areas. So those rights exist and you can go and undertake those. Sometimes those rights are different to a house that's not in a conservation area, but where you're dealing with this planning application, yes, the statutory test applies, so it must preserve or enhance, so at least meet a neutral impact.
Councillor Smythe, questions?
Just one question pursuant on the other questions about the roof light. Originally, it's only in the SMAT that we learn that this is a planning application for the installation of 2 roof lights on the side roof slope. I understood that that was because it was a conservation area, even though you can't see it from anywhere, and even though it's not significantly altering the why is it that they need to apply for planning permission for the installation of the roof lights? Because they're not on the front elevation.
It's purely because they're clear glazed and on the side elevation. So the regulations allow you to put an opening in on the side elevation, but it must be obscure glazed. And that's presumably based on the idea that a side-facing window may cause more loss of privacy than a front-facing or a back-facing window.
I mean, there are quite a few properties in Southsea where you can watch the neighbour cleaning their teeth over 2 unobscured roof lights, and I'm sure there may be some in that area too. Thank you.
Members, are there any more questions? Councillor Hugh Mason.
If we can go back to the living space on the ground floor. This is 26 square meters, which is above our minimum standard of 22. But there seems to be a corridor right the way through the middle to the back of the property. Is there adequate living space alongside this very small kitchen? It looks very tight to me, given that there is a corridor through the middle.
Thank you, Chair. That's not unusual that within these communal living spaces you would have to come from the front of the property. They're normally located at the back. Not unusual that you'd have to come through the front hallway into that, but it also then has an access into the back garden. So most of these that we see would actually serve that function of going from the sort of middle back of the house out into the rear garden area. Actually, this property has an additional advantage in that you can actually get to the garden without needing to go through that space as well, because you can go through the side gate as well. And that doesn't happen with a lot of the properties that we see because they're obviously terraced and there isn't that rear access. So I'm conscious that arguments about conflict in the use of the kitchen have been explored before on some appeals where we've been unsuccessful, particularly in relation to possible conflicts about someone using the kitchen while someone's trying to get a wheel a bike through, etc. But inspectors, I'm afraid, have been unsympathetic to that as a reason for refusal, bearing in mind the fleeting nature of any conflict of people moving between those spaces.
Councillor Candish.
Whilst I'll come back to something else in a moment maybe, but I also just wanted to explore the bikes. Normally, we are chasing for any bike storage to be put into a property, and on this instance, rather than the minimum of 4, we have a frankly enormous capacity of 11 being put in there. Is there any reason for that? And how is that being done?
That was in the applicant's proposal, and as I said during the presentation, we require at least 4. How many they end up providing above that number is up to them, really.
Councillor Cordy, question?
Yeah, just so I can get this straight in my head. So we've got the capacity for 11 bicycles, potentially having to come through that kitchen and the rest of the house, or is there a side or back entrance?
Yeah, there is a side
Thank you.
entrance that was on the side plan.
Any more questions from members? Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Simpson first because he got in there just before you, Councillor Hunt.
A lot of my questions were actually asked by all the wonderful other councillors in here, so I was kind of lucky. I've got 2 problems with this application. Firstly, it's the living standards, the living room, essentially, or the living space for everyone. I kind of feel when we normally have 7 bedrooms, it's for 7 people. And we look at this and we think, okay, yeah, they're over the 10 metres squared, and okay, so they only have to, they only have to provide a certain amount of living space over 22, and okay, this is 4 metres over, but this is 9 people. This is like 2 extra people. I mean, if you think about breakfast in the morning, lunchtime, dinner time, that's a lot of people to fit in that space. And I just kind of feel like that's just too many people, too many people. That's my first issue. I also feel that bedroom 7, that is not enough light. I can tell you now, funny enough, even though Councillor Cordy didn't mention it, but Councillor Cordy and I have worked in film for a long time, and light is a really important part for filming. And I can tell you right now that room would not have enough light. It is tiny. And I actually think that if Judith actually went to see it and view it, like on a previous application, she would not like. So I might be speaking for you, Judith, but I know that you're very hot on...
I don't think that's appropriate to put words in the mouth of someone else in relation to a previous application.
But either way, having an adequate lighting in the room is very important. So I want to put two proposals here. Firstly, to refuse the application based on overdevelopment, overconcentration, change the character to the area based on the chimney and losing some green space. I don't believe the living space is adequate enough to ensure acceptable living standards under our PSC 20 and PSC 23, and also the lack of light for room 7. However, if if the committee today cannot second that, at least a deferred for viewing and to hold back planning permission until it's built, so we can actually see how this the living space looks like, especially if it's going to have 9 people, and also how much light is actually going into bedroom 7. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so you're putting forward a proposal for refusal. Can we just clarify the planning? I need to get the wording right on the planning reasons.
Yeah, so for overdevelopment...
Maybe officers could help a little bit with the actual detail of the planning. So not enough light, I don't know whether that's... What evidence would we have to give?
Well, that's why I suggested the viewing on the second one, because I think that would supply. But basically, overdevelopment, overconcentration, I think taken away from the character of the area, and also I don't believe there's enough adequate living space, and it comes under PSC 20 and PSC 23.
Chair.
Councillor
Chair,
Hunt.
Chair, did you want to explore those reasons for refusal a little more?
Is it? I'm just wondering.
Can the planning officer?
Yeah, I'm just
suggested reasons for refusal.
Yeah, so I mean, so I'd like some clarity on the overdevelopment, overconcentration point, Chair, because I don't think I understand what that objection is.
I think 7 bedrooms would be for 7 people, and that would actually fit better with the living space required, instead of actually adding an extra 2 more people in. Normally we'd have a much bigger living space to accommodate 9 people, and I actually think that it's not enough. That's my opinion.
So, Chair, my advice is sort of twofold. The rooms that are shown at double occupancy far exceed our standard in the HMO, and the living space meets the standard in the HMO. So I'm struggling where our evidence and harm for an overdevelopment is on that regard. In terms of the reference to going and looking at the site, we can't look at that room because it's not converted. So it's a proposal of the scheme to convert it. Standing in there won't tell you anything. It'll just tell you it's a loft at the moment. So you won't gain anything from that. Yeah, in terms of an aperture for that space, that's more than adequate, and we really won't have any case at all in arguing that that's an unacceptable living environment for an occupier.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go on and hear what other members have got to say. Councillor Hunt was next, then Councillor Smythe, then Councillor Candlish, and then I'll come back to Councillor Cordy.
Sorry, does the planning officer want to come back on character of the area as well?
I've just been interrupted, I've been waiting. Do you mind if I get my
we'll carry on with the comments, but we can come back to that.
Sorry,
yeah.
Mrs. Gill. I'll just get ready to talk again. Whilst, Chair, I'm going to go on a bit. Whilst I sympathise with where Councillor Simpson is wanting to go, I'm afraid he's kind of missed the target, because I don't think we have a leg to stand on the space standards. I've listened to everything everybody says. I don't think we have a leg to stand on the space standards. On room 7, I've listened to the planning officer's advice, and that is rooms like that are common and lit, and you see some quite small windows. But I'm not going to go on the internal configuration of the building. It is a very large building, and we've had our fingers burnt so many times when we try to, and I've listened to what Councillor Dorrington said as well, about the units taking up space and so on. We have tried this one over and over and over again, and every single time, as I think apart from one, as the planning officer says, that the government planning inspector does not sympathise with us on this approach. So we would be throwing good money after bad if we went down that route. Where I do begin to join with Councillor Simpson is, he says out of character, well, I think what I need to say, and I'm going to have to read, I've been making notes as I go along, before anybody says I came with a view, that I'm going to make some comments here. So Councillor Dorrington said that this was a well-maintained and Victorian house. And I would say to the committee, what is more Victorian than chimneys? This is a conservation area. We have determined that, and we know it is. And the loss of an important chimney stack is a great concern, notwithstanding the removal of any other features. And that is wrong. It is wrong to do that. The integrity of our conservation areas are important. Things like drain pipes, walls, doors, windows, and even the glass, the reflection in the glass, is very important. So the destruction of the historic chimney, it's been there a long time, compromises the conservation area. On parking, the area, although the officers aren't clear on this, it is very clear in the report. They're not clear about it today. It's already oversubscribed. And adding 9 more what would be homes, these would be home to people, will make that worse. And as for the number of bike stalls, I presume the British cycling team is moving in. There we are. So to have even more cars on the road would harm residential amenities. And I talk about sustainability, and I've read in the report and I've heard it said, but nevertheless, we are entitled here to apply common sense and local knowledge. This simply is not a sustainable location, despite the evidence in the report. We're entitled to have our view too. Therefore, people will bring cars. This is an expensive area to live in. These will be young professional people, probably. I have no idea about the future intended occupiers, but I imagine there'll be young professional people, and they'll be commuting out the city to go to work. That would be my guess. So that is just a guess. And I think the Highways Report 8.3, which I pointed out earlier, is rather wishful thinking. So the addition of bins, I'm not sure where they were meant to be put. I'm not sure whether they were in the front garden or not. But if they are, that also detracts from the conservation area. I suspect they'll be around the back, but more often when you see these large ones like this, the bins tend to go in the front. But there was no clarity over that I heard early on. So the right way to deal with this is the conservation aspect and the parking. So I'm going to propose, I'm terribly sorry, Councillor Simpson, I'm not being difficult, but I think you've gone slightly down the wrong path. I don't believe we can do anything about the internal configuration of the property, but I respect the fact that you've put that. I propose to refuse this application on the grounds of parking, that the area is already at 100% 0.42 capacity. So adding yet more cars by way of 9 more people will have an adverse impact on street amenities, worsening the parking situation. On conservation, we heard the officers say that what we do in a conservation area must have a neutral impact. This application does not have a neutral impact. As Councillor Dorrington points out, as Councillor Candish points out, it has a detrimental impact on the streetscape. The destruction of the chimney is particularly important, and the insertion of roof lights is out of character with that area, in sympathy with what Councillor Simpson says. And all of these things combine, or on their own, undermine the integrity of this Victorian conservation area. The adverse impact on the visual amenities have a detrimental impact on the conservation area, and this application does not conserve but detracts from the conservation area. I think that is the situation that this local planning authority should be going on. I really do caution against going on the internal configuration because it won't win. But I think the planning officer, the government planning officer will look at us, notwithstanding the fact that chimneys have been removed in the area previously. Two wrongs don't make a right, and there's no reason for this planning committee to agree to undermine the appearance of the conservation any more than has gone on so far. I think you have got the gist of it, and Chair, for yourself and the planning officer, I have made details, reasons and backed up my argument. I hope that is sufficient. So it's on those two grounds, conservation and parking. I can't agree with the overdevelopment of the property. It is a very big property. And again, going down that route would only encourage any planning inspector to say we'd gone for a scattergun approach and then start to impose costs on us. We don't, we have to look after the public purse. It's very important. Therefore, the decisions that we make must be considered and they must be careful so as to avoid unnecessary strain on the public purse, which isn't a planning consideration, I know, but is equally still important.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. I'm going to go through the other people who've indicated that they want to speak, and if they want to second either of those proposals or propose another recommendation, if they could take that opportunity. So Councillor Smythe is next.
I would like to propose that we give this HMO, which is very large, a conditional permission as indicated in the officer's report. I note particularly that I agree with Councillor Hunt about the internal layout. I'm happy with the lighting in bedroom 7. In fact, it looks very like the room in which my daughter was brought up, and also where she's currently writing her PhD, and she seems to close the blinds because it's very bright coming in through a very similar dormer window. I would like to draw attention to the bicycle storage at the back. Have you noticed that lots of cyclists have 2 bicycles, and this would be very attractive to somebody who was a cyclist, but also it doesn't require going through the property, which is a very, very big benefit, I think. The bedrooms, we're not used to looking at plans with such big bedrooms in it. These are huge. They will be really attractive places for young people, single people, and perhaps a couple of couples to live happily together. I'm very glad that the front of the property is not being altered. I think the removal of walls to create parking spaces, unless it's done very sensitively, is very detrimental to the conservation area. But I think the loss of another chimney, when already 29, 37, 41 and 43 in the street have lost their chimneys, is not, in my view, a detriment to the conservation area, nor the attractiveness of the street. So I'd like to propose the officer's recommendation and approve this very attractive, high standard HMO, where I hope people will be very happy to live in such a friendly street.
Thank you, Councillor Smythe. Next on my list is Councillor Candlish.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm grateful still to have the opportunity to speak on this matter, as I know the government is proposing to take away the right of councillors to speak on such matters, and I think this is a really good example about why it is important that we are able to do so. I'm also cognizant of the fact that the changes to the MPPF framework in December 24 have moved up the bar for reasons why we should be opposing a piece of development from not simply a clear reason to a strong reason, and that gives even more weight to the developers. But this is not a normal HMO. We are used to seeing them where, bluntly, we are concerned about the borders of internal living being acceptable. I agree with Councillor Hunt here that I think we will lose that battle because the standards are very high. And frankly, knowing the area as I do, the rent that will be required to take up one of these places will not be someone on minimum wage. They will be expensive locations to go to. So my comments relate to this being in a conservation area. We have a limited number of these in the city, and we choose to call them out because we believe that they should be treated differently. And I believe that this development has a risk of undermining what is an important conservation area. It will change the nature of the character of the area. It's been explained that the regrettable loss of the chimney is not something we can do anything about, that the regrettable loss of all the internal features is not something we can do about, but there are things that we can do and take some action about. If you know the street and the area, the look is dependent on a certain coherence of the properties down there. And yes, there is a mixed number of properties through there, but to be honest, they stand out and they undermine the conservation nature of the area. I also want to, we're always told also, and this is the benefit of councillors getting involved, to talk about the specifics of the location. So this HMO isn't going in anywhere down a long street where, you know, there might be some space for things to come back and forth. This is located on a blind corner in an area where we've already said we're at 100% of the official parking capacity and where we're putting 11 bicycle spaces in. And yes, Councillor Smythe is correct. That could be people having multiple bikes. It could also be a reflection that with 9 people in there, young professionals at the height of their sort of social life and socialising, they'll be having an awful lot of visitors. So that's a lot of people coming in and out onto the road, onto this blind corner. Finally, in terms of specifics about this location, there is the idea that we have in our regulation about not boxing people in. Now, normally, on a straight street, that makes it's about people being sandwiched between 2 properties. But here you heard from the deputation from the local resident that the property is effectively going to box in. We have to think 3-dimensionally here because the road sweeps round, and there are going to be people who are effectively surrounded by HMOs. Each individually might not be an issue, but cumulatively that definitely is. Finally, just for the record, I have to put on that we are going to need to do some improvements to our planning portal, because in this application and in other ones that have occurred in my ward, there have been concerns that, you know, it's been up, it's been down, and people are worried about missing their ability to object. Now, on that one, I have to say, ultimately, I think everyone has had an opportunity to do so, but I think publicly I want to call that out because it has been a concern to my residents, and their comment about that should be recorded. That's all I have on that. Thank you, Chair.
I was about to clarify. It sounds like a lot of the time you said you agreed with Councillor Hunt, so do you want to second his...
I'm therefore happy to second Councillor Hunt. But, okay. Chair, the only reason I didn't was I wasn't quite sure what Councillor Hunt's proposal had been boiled down to, and I was trying to provide some specifics, site-specific information to buttress that proposal.
Okay. Councillor Gordy.
Thank you, Chair. We often hear that a HMO will have a similar level of residence to a large family living in a property, but 9 people does seem excessive to me. Although the proposal does meet minimum space standards, I do have concerns around whether the communal area and amenities can adequately support 9 residents. There's a potential for increased noise and disturbances for neighbours, combined with the potential of 9 more vehicles parking down Whitwell Road. So for these reasons, I'd like to second Councillor Simpson's first proposal.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Corday. Anyone else want to comment? Councillor Valerie?
I'd like to second Councillor Smythe's motion, please. And can I just point out that whether somebody earns universal credit or is in a well-paid professional job does not make a difference in their behaviour necessarily.
I don't know whether that was said, was it? But,
Chair, I think the fear was raised by me in that I did raise the fact that I think this is not... HMO is a very broad term, and we are being asked to look at this as a site-specific proposal. Within that site-specific proposal, I think it does make sense to think about the likely uses of it, and that does include the ability of people to afford cars and things like that. That is the relevance of it to this specific application.
okay, thanks for that clarification. Councillor Hugh Mason.
I don't like this proposal, but on the other hand, I cannot see anything which will stand up as an objection to it. I don't think that, given the number of chimneys which have been removed, that we can rely on that within this area. I think that our experience on parking is that so long as there's an available bus route, we will not be able to sustain an objection on parking. The living space standards here are adequate. We have told that the windows and the fire are a matter for building control, not for planning. And therefore, I cannot see that there are adequate reasons for turning this one down.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, I think Councillor Hunt and I at least agree on the conservation part, but I there's one thing I was quite surprised. I was quite surprised that Councillor Hunt chose parking, as he knows fully well. If you're talking about wasting taxpayers' money, I can't even think of the whole time I've been here that not only has it been refused for parking, but also it's been upheld. Either way, I think, you know, I'm not happy with this application, and I won't be voting for it.
Can I just get some clarification, because you're the first person to put through a proposal for not supporting officers' recommendations. Can you just clarify again so that I know the reasons why it's so...
Well, obviously, I said out of character, you know, it's, you know, not out of character, but the change of character, which obviously comes under the conservation area, which is the right wording, is always helpful in this case. But I still believe that it's not enough adequate light into bedroom 7, and I believe it is overdevelopment, and sorry, over concentration within that development, especially that falls under our PSC 20 and PSC 23. That's my opinion. It's been seconded.
Okay.
As a matter of process, Chair, I think Ms Gill might tell us that because Councillor Simpson got his on the table first, and then it subsequently got seconded, although I didn't think it was going to at first, that his vote might come first, or because mine was on the table next, but then seconded, became the substantive proposal, that one would come first.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. I was just going to check that because I had written the order in which that they were proposed, so I just was going to take advice on that. So does Councillor Simpson's...
Councillor Hunt's motion was seconded first, so his takes precedent, and then Russell Simpson's was seconded by Councillor Cordy, so that one's second, and then Councillor Vallely seconded Councillor Smythe's proposal, which will come third.
Yeah, that's the order I had.
So the trouble is with this is we have a bit of a problem, because Councillor Simpson won't agree with me on the parking, which I think should be in there, and I don't agree with him on the internal layout, because we will certainly lose. And the trouble is, if we don't agree somewhere along the line, the chances are it will go through on Councillor Smythe's recommendation.
That's what we've got before us. Okay, so I think I know the order in which goes. So any other comments before we go to the vote?
Chair, before you do the first vote...
I just need to clarify the
Yeah,
planning reasons, because I still am not clear in my head with the first recommendation for refusal. You're saying...
Well, half of it is what Councillor Hunt has said, so that's that I could have that just alone if that makes it even clearer. And then it would make it even easier then for, I mean, because basically I've outlined about the conservation, which is also what Councillor Hunt, but actually neither the conservation or parking had actually been questioned by the planning officers at all for clarification. So I'm a little bit surprised that Non-Stop has come back to me to clarify when I've actually said it about 3 times.
Chair, if I've understood correctly, you're going to take Councillor Hunt's move first. So shall we clarify Councillor Hunt's move, take that to a vote, then see where we get to? Because
Yes,
if
and
that's
that
carried,
might-
that's the end of the process. So,
Okay, I think Councillor Hunt actually read out some quite coherent reasons
I can
around
do it again.
conservation.
I'm quite...
no, I was just going to summarise.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So he's going
I
to
beg your pardon.
summarise.
Yes,
Yeah, so,
he will create it better than me.
Effectively 2 reasons for refusal. Impacts on the conservation area relating to the loss of chimney and roof lights, and then the impact from parking from the increased number of occupiers. Would that be a fair summary?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Chair, I think the one bill, if Councillor Hunt would accept it, would be something... We are much more specific about it. It is not generally, it is because of the specific site location as well, on both the parking and the...
And he's saying that the corner location makes it even worse.
Because a general, as my understanding is, the parking inspector, the planning inspectorate will throw something out if it is about a generic complaint about parking or we are not meeting the threshold on the conservation area. But if we are making it about a specific reason about this specific site, that is at least a stronger reason. And if if Councillor Hunt would be willing to...
So it would start with something like that, due to its location on a blind corner, blah-de-blah-de-blah.
Okay.
Eloquently put, Councillor Hunt.
I've got that, yeah.
Councillor Smythe wants to make a comment, I'm assuming, about this discussion.
I just wanted to add to what I had said in support of this application. Whitwell Road is not a main road, and I can see that we don't normally refuse corner properties because of that. Second of all, we have to, as a city, whether we like it or not, accept that lower car ownership is what the future looks like. We are in a climate emergency, and we have to take into account the vastly improved public transport system, thank you Peter, Councillor Candlish, and the walking areas and the use of bicycles. It is the future, and I know that just as the inspectors won't uphold that, I certainly don't think we should uphold these concerns about parking when we have to all reduce our car ownership. Thank you.
Thank you. I shall move to... Oh.
I'm going to say it just because the thing is, I have actually checked this SPDs and it seems to be the clarity. So it's to do basically what I'm outlining is the living space, so the shared living space, and in my opinion, the lack of light for room 7 under the living standards under PCS 20. That was the first one, and then the second one is under the conservation out of change of character. That'd be under the PCS 23. Just so it's nice and clear, I'm pretty sure the planning officers know that's very coherent. Thank you.
Okay, so the proposal we've got in front of us, proposed by Councillor Lee Hunt, seconded by Councillor Candlish, is to refuse the change of use planning application as we have before us, for the reasons outlined, which we won't go over again because I think they've been clarified. Okay, so all those in favour of Councillor Hunt's proposal? 1, 2, 3, 4. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Any abstentions? Yes. Okay.
Sorry, the chair has casting vote.
So that falls. So we come on to the next. Do we come on to the next? No. So that's.
How are you voting for? You voted for
against it. I vote against it.
Okay, so it'll be another one against with the casting vote. So that motion falls.
Do we go to the next one? Does that fall?
Yes, so you go
Yes,
to
we go to the
Councillor
next
Simpson's
motion, which
proposals
was
now, yeah.
Russell Simpson.
So the next motion is Councillor Simpson's. All those in favour? All those against? All abstentions?
That motion falls.
Motion falls. So the final one is to approve.
Just that was 4-3. Just to. for
Sorry,
the record.
4-3. Yes,
I beg your pardon.
I must say that. 4-3. And so we come on to the final proposal in the name of Councillor Smythe, seconded by Councillor Vallely, which is to move officers' recommendations for the change of use with all of the conditions that are outlined in the papers. All those in favour? All those against? And abstentions?
Planning permission is therefore granted.
Thank you. Okay. So we go on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 5, which is Castle Road, which is about planning permission for the installation of new shop front. We have been given some information which I'm happy to circulate, but I'm not going to stop the meeting for people to read through it. So if the person doing their deputation could draw attention to any particular points in that.
Chair, if I may, the standing orders allow modest submissions from those making deputations. The planning officer has read the 20-page document. To me, that's not a modest submission. So the planning officer will draw you to the points. The main bulk is already covered by some submissions that have been made by email, and Sam will draw your attention to anything else, okay?
So, presentation from the officers first.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is an application 81 to 83 Castle Road, installation of a new shop front. If we move on. So you'll see it's at the south end of Castle Road, which is within the Castle Road Conservation Area. The application site being on the east side, which is a parade of shops, and then mainly residential on the west side opposite the site. So I'll draw your attention to the existing floor plans, and for your reference, as you all have read in the report, this is an unauthorised alteration. The main point of interest on these floor plans that you'll see is the sliding door, which is inappropriate addition to the conservation area. And this is the unauthorised shop front. As you'll see, it's quite poorly proportioned, and in the photos that we'll have at the end, you can also see that the materials are inappropriate for its use in a conservation area. And here's a comparison between the approved but wrongly implemented planning permission they had. So you'll see a range of differences, including the proportions of the windows, the location of the door, the type of door, and the materials. So this is a proposed floor plans. Again, I draw your attention to the now correct sort of style of door, which would be much more in keeping with other shops within the conservation area. And the proposed elevations, as you can see, it's much more nicely proportioned. This has been examined by myself and the conservation officer. We're both content that this meets the statutory test of preserving the conservation area. You note that the door has been retained on the other side of the column. However, it has been reduced in width somewhat, so it's much better proportioned, and it does preserve the conservation area, we feel. And that's just within the wider street scene. Castle Road has some very nice shop fronts, and this application has been assessed against the guidance for shop fronts within the non-binding guidance for shop fronts, which is contained within the conservation area guidance, and it does meet that. And this is just a comparison between what should have been built and what is proposed to be built. You can see it is a subtle improvement upon what was already an improvement to quite a poor shop front, which we'll just have a look at now, I think. So this is what it looked like November 2023. Quite cluttered, poorly proportioned, the colours weren't good, the materials weren't good, so we're happy that the proposed shop front is a great improvement upon this. And this is just a small selection of shots of what they have built without planning consent. There is a pending enforcement inquiry which the applicant has been engaging with enforcement throughout the process, and that is how we've reached a stage where we are presenting a planning application to you at this meeting. And that is just a wider shot of the entire shop front. So I will draw your attention to the SMAT and also the document that you've been provided with today that I've had a read through at the beginning of this meeting. A lot of this document is similar to an additional comment that was provided at the end of last week and has been covered in the SMAT, but to briefly cover, there have been a few additional conditions requested. It's the opinion of the local planning authority that none of the conditions requested would meet the 6 tests for a planning condition to be lawful, and each reason for that has been fully explained within your SMAT. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we now go to deputations, and we have 3 deputations, up to 6 minutes each, and I will start with Mr. Brazier.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Steve Brazier, Secretary of the Castle Road Community Association, and we've provided the written submission today detailing our key points, conclusion and a chronology of events to give you some understanding of the situation we have, along with a residential nuisance report that has been submitted to Environmental Health in April. And we would ask you to take consideration of those before coming to a decision. The CRCA supports the replacement of the metal shop front with a new timber one, but opposes the application for the reasons detailed in our submission, which I intend to summarise, unless certain conditions are applied. The planning application approved in November 23 provided for the existing shop front and signage to be removed, with care taken to retain original details, which would then be renovated and decorated. This included the first floor bay window along with all dividing piers at ground floor level. A new timber shop front was to be installed with all features constructed in traditional timber with a painted finish, new signage and any salvageable cornicing retained and renovated. The Community Association directors met with Mr Shukla and his architect Mr Russell on the 5th of December 23 when we were assured that all of the original features would be retained, renovated and repaired, including the first floor bay window, and none of this has happened. On the 16th of September 24, work commenced removing the old shop front. I spoke with Mr Shukla that day, having raised concerns with his contractor that they were installing a metal instead of a timber shop front, and Mr Shukla claimed to have council agreement to vary the planning consent. I contacted the planning department advising that a metal shop front was being installed, and Mr Kushner advised that the matter had been passed to planning enforcement and they had not had any contact by phone, email or otherwise to vary the conditions. I met with Mr Shukla on site on the 18th of September when he advised that as the shop front had previously been metal, he was replacing like for like and therefore did not need permission to vary the planning consent. But he did ask me to find a contractor to help restore the bay window, noting the owner was in Sri Lanka and that price was not an issue. The Community Association found a contractor, the joiner shop, to restore the bay window. I provided Mr Shukla with a guide price of $13,000 and asked what work was to be undertaken to renovate the cornicing and pillars found during the works. As they had not been renovated, everything had just been spray painted black. On the 30th of September, I emailed Mr Shukla asking for an update on the window and the renovations of the cornicing and pillars as the shop had reopened. He replied that as the owner had not accepted the offer, there was nothing further he could do, and he was nothing to do with the window and we should contact the council. In October 24, Planning Enforcement advised the association that the rectification works would be undertaken as per the previously approved plans within a timely manner to limit harm to the conservation area, yet we are here 9 months on and nothing has happened. To date, no work has been undertaken to repair or renovate any of the original features in this heritage area, and this needs to be addressed, we believe, with the current application. The association has 5 concerns with the report that's attached to your agenda. The summary of the proposed works in this application sets out that signage arrangements will be removed with care taken to retain original details, which will then be decorated, with salvageable cornicing and renders retained and renovated by a specialist. However, the note at 6.3 of your report only advises that signage requires separate advertising consent. The committee is requested to require that when the shop front is replaced, work is undertaken on the signage in accordance with the summary of the proposed works. The 2023 application approved included the retained original details being renovated, and that included the first floor bay window. The note at 6.4 of the committee report advises that the proposals relate only to the shop front, and the council has no power to compel the owner to carry out those works. The committee is asked to request that the first floor bay window is renovated in accordance with the agreed 2023 planning application. The application supporting statement also states that the existing shop front, when it's removed, care will be taken to retain original features, which will be renovated and decorated. The note at 6.4 of the council's report, however, advises that renovation is beyond your control. The committee is requested to include a condition that the renovations are undertaken in accordance with the supporting statement of the application, under close supervision by the council, as no work has been undertaken previously on the original features. The note at 6.4 of your report advises that nuisance from lighting should be referred to environmental health. I've attached at the end of our summary the official notification of the concerns by the resident opposite, which has not had a reply since the 10th of April. The committee is therefore requested to include a condition when the shop front is replaced that material is added to the glass or tinted glass is considered to be used to prevent the light spill. The drawings you saw on the pictures in front of you show a proposed door position to meet disabled access requirements, but there remains a significant step up into the shop. 8.21 of your report notes the plans do not show a step at the door or on the proposed floor plan of the shop. That fails to do with the fact there is a significant step in place, and the committee is asked to make conditions that disabled access is provided. The 2023 planning application provided the owner with 3 years to replace the shop front and renovate the decorate the original features. When the metal shop front was installed, and since then there has not been any renovation undertaken, we do not believe, therefore, it would be appropriate to allow a further 3 years as proposed. The community association has worked closely with our ward councillors, and it's unfortunate that none of them are able to be here today. I understand one of the councillors asked for deferment until the bond was present, but I recognise the delay that's already been in this matter. It was working with them that they suggested we ask for conditions to be applied, and we would ask the committee to consider 4 conditions. The works are completed in a timely manner, which should be no later than the end of the 3 years granted under the 23 application, and preferably sooner. Original features are decorated and renovated when the shop front is replaced, in accordance with the 23 application. When the shop front is replaced, material is added to the glass or tinted glass is used to reduce light spill, and that level disabled access is provided to address the current unacceptable access into the store. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. And so we go on to the next deputation, which is Avril Lewis. You have 6 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Avril Lewis, and I'm representing the Castle Road Community Association as Heritage Director. You might find I emphasise some of what Steve's just said, because we're very much in accord here. On the 5th of December 2023, the Castle Road Community Association met with D84 Architects and the shop owner of 81 to 83 Castle Road to discuss details for the new shop front signage and repairs to architectural features and to the historic bay window at 83, as outlined in Planning Permission 23000198 FUL, conditional permission dated the 16th of the 11th, 2023. We felt it to be a productive meeting wherein the designs met with the expectations of those in Castle Road, that the proposed shop fronts would emulate and complement existing facades. In my response to this planning application for the installation of a new shop front to the numbers 81 and 83, I queried in my comment to the Planning Department why the repair and decoration to the first floor bay at 83 Castle Road have not been included. I had no reply to my query, hence one of my reasons here for the deputation. Under representation 6.4 officer note of the committee report for this planning application is stated the proposals relate only to the shopfront. The council has no powers to compel the owner to carry out works to the first floor bay window. I was not asking for any enforcement at this stage, the owner having until November 2026 in which to make repairs to the bay window. Under planning history 4.1 planning reference 23011198, it does not mention the inclusion of repair to the bay window at 83 Castle Road, whereas the amalgamation of the retail spaces at ground floor and replacement shop fronts to 81 and 83 Castle Road were. But in that planning application, under decision notice approved plans, drawing number D8423_2920, it says, proposed west elevation 8, bay to residential unit, renovated and decorated, being specified. The planning application under discussion today uses the same drawing number, but omits the repairs to the bay window. As Steve mentioned, we consulted the local specialist, the joiner's shop, for advice on repairs necessary to the bay window. They had originally inspected it 30 years or so ago, saying that the condition now is no better, so clearly little had been done to repair it. To bring it back to a sound structural condition would entail complete like-for-like replacement. It is potentially dangerous. The owner said that the quote of £13,000 was too high. This will only increase, and I know it has, with further deterioration. Whilst I understand that the subjects of this application are the new shop fronts, nevertheless my concern is that repair to the bay window is being ignored. So please can the Planning Committee confirm that repair works to the bay window at 83 Castle Road, as specified in planning application reference 23011198 FUL, still stand, or has the whole planning application been superseded? I'm also concerned that under representation 6.4, where the public comment was made that no care was taken when installing the unauthorised metal shop front in order to renovate the features, the officer note states this is beyond the council control. How is this when in both planning applications, specifications for repairs to the cornice and pilasters are clear to see? The current planning application, again, same drawing number D8423_2920, item 7, proposes new signage in original position beneath renovated cornicing and between renovated pier details, whilst replacement shop front 5.14 says, in addition, the proposal would retain the original pilasters that also make a positive contribution to the shop front. How can it not then be under the jurisdiction of the council's planning department? In light of recent actions, could an appraisal of Castle Road Conservation Area number 12 be considered? Castle Road Conservation Area appraisal is a supplementary planning document guidance adopted by the council under item 7.5 as being relevant to the current proposals. This southeastern part of Castle Road in particular has several buildings worthy of preserving, but has no other protection than that of the conservation area, such as, which could be put to good use, Article 4, direction. As the conservation officer said in the report under significance considerable, 5.8, the extent of surviving original frontages or buildings found within the area, alongside the architectural and historic quality of the site, are considered to afford this conservation area a considerable degree of significance. And 8.4, principle of development, says PCS 2.3 highlights the importance of protecting and enhancing the historic landscape and its cultural natural heritage. Castle Road is fortunate in having the support of Portsmouth City Council, with the community's desire to improve the area in the form of the upcoming street improvements, and I hope that these factors will be taken into consideration and clarified. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation. We have final deputation by the applicant, Mr. Shukla. You have 6 minutes, Mr. Shukla.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. My name is Mehul Shukla. I'm the managing director of the 4 companies in retail and convenience stores, and I've been working in retail since 2009. We employ a large number of local staff and deeply invest in the community we serve. I'm here today as an applicant for the traditional shopfront replacement. I have considerable experience with the shopfront and the store refit across my businesses. However, in this particular case, I was not fully aware that the building fell under heritage consideration in the beginning. As a result, an unintentional error was made by me during the initial refit process, which unfortunately led to financial loss, and we need to restart the application as well by the council. Since then, I have taken every step to correct the situation. I have hired one of the best architects in the Portsmouth, Keith Russell, with a strong track record, along with the contractor experienced in working in a conservation area. Our revised proposal respects the character of the historical context of the area while still meeting the practical needs of the stores and its customers. The shopfront will be constructed using the Seepil hardwood, which is a durable timber from the mahogany family. Ideal for the conservation area. Full method statements and technical details have been submitted by my contractors and architects as a part of the applications. As a public comments, I can see a window repair above the store. It's a separate residential unit, not under our ownership or control. Light pollution does not relate to the shopfront application and falls outside of its scopes. For shopfront material, which again I'll assure councils to be huge high quality, it's 2 times costly for me. Heritage appropriate hardwood material will be used as per the conservation guidelines, and I respect the heritage and the character of the area when we have acted promptly and responsibly aligned with the council guidance. I respectfully request approval of this revised, professionally redesigned and shopfront application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's the end of the deputations. So, Councillor Hunt, questions?
Could I ask the planning officer, please? If this were refused today, what would the difference be between refusing it today and any subsequent enforcement action? Would there be any benefit that came back from an enforcement? Will we get anything more back? I mean, like, we can't get the features back that have been destroyed, but will we get something else back with enforcement if we didn't agree to this today?
I don't believe features have been destroyed, Councillor. So, left-hand side is what they already have planning permission for, and they're still in time to implement that. So, if today the planning application was refused, they still have a fallback position to carry out this scheme. Our professional advice is we think this scheme's better, what's before you today. If you refuse that application, obviously you need planning reasons to have done that, but they would still be able to implement that, but also the shopfront that there is still unlawful. So we can still enforce against that. And as set out in the officer's report, our view is that what's been installed is harmful, and we reckon we would have reasonable grounds to seek its removal. The difference would be if you refuse today's application, if we serve an enforcement notice, we can only compel them to implement that correctly. If we approve this, then we can have an enforcement notice that compels them to, they'd be able to implement either, and need to be clear on that, but we could compel them to take in either. And both would be clearly meet the test of an improvement over that. That's where you would be.
So the second one today sees the above the window, the shorter, more Victorian-looking windows are above the main windows. They're more, yeah, which is what you more often see from Victorian times. There's a better balance with this one, and we're talking now about the location of a door by the sound of it, a slightly less wide door. Is that correct?
Yeah, so because there is a column, if you look on the left-hand image, there's a column just on the right of the door.
Yeah.
So because of that column, the door can't be placed there and be wide enough for disabled access. Therefore, it's been placed on the other side of the column, but we're still happy that as an overall would still preserve the conservation area.
Thank you all very much. And I read the SMAT, and you're saying that those conditions that the local Castle Road Association is asking for are simply not implementable.
There's a slight difference between the conditions on the email that was sent previously to the ones today. So in terms of the thing that you've been circulated today, the first 3 conditions wouldn't meet the test. I think the disabled access one, that if you wanted to, I think that would be okay.
Lastly, there was a third thing, and it just suddenly escaped my mind as you come with age, I guess.
Why don't you have a think? You can always come back,
Yeah.
Councillor Hunt. Can I jump in with a question? I just need, I think I know the answer to this, but I need the clarity about the bay window, because that seems to be, I thought that's what you were thinking. I think that seems to be, first of all, of concern, and I want to know where it disappeared, at what point it disappeared. And the second thing, it does seem that if we're paying attention to something in conservation terms, that it seems a very, very appropriate point to actually understand what the opportunities are for repairing and preserving that.
Yes, thanks, Chair. So, so maybe I'll do this way round. So, when we dealt with this application on the left, which is the extant permission, there's a reference on this approved plan that talks about restoring this bay window. And you can't see all of it in here, but it's this. And it's a fine historic feature. When we dealt with this planning application, we didn't have a specific condition relating to that, and there are good reasons for that, because what needed planning permission was the change of this shop front. So the change of this from this, that's what needed planning permission. Repairing, restoring that doesn't need planning permission. So what's within the scope of that consent is this shop front here. And likewise, today, what's within the scope of your planning application is this shop front here. So if we're imposing a condition, it's got to be for works that need related to the planning application principally, and that's our reason why. So just to give you an analogy, we couldn't force anyone to change this shop front. So if the owner had continued to operate with the shop front as is, it's been there a long time, it's most likely lawful, probably had planning permission in the past, there wouldn't be anything we can do about that. So we wouldn't have any grounds to go along to the applicant as the planning authority and say, I want you to restore this window in the next 6 months, no matter how laudable, how desirable that may be. So we just need to ensure that any conditions we do are within the scope of what's applied for and what needs planning permission.
So it was, just so that I'm absolutely clear on this, in the first application, which would be, if we refuse, might be an option to enforce that planning application, that was never part of that planning application.
There's a reference.
It was only the shop front.
Yeah, there's a reference to doing works to that, noted on the plans. But in terms of what needed planning permission, that wasn't that. And there wasn't a condition attached saying, as part of the works. And you'll see in the SMAT, it's the guidance on the reasonableness of the condition cautions both against requiring someone to carry out works within a particular time frame, because if they've got a permission they can implement it or not, that's their choice, but also about completion of works. Again, and we set out in the SMAT the government's guidance on why that doesn't meet the tests.
Thank you. Councillor Smythe is next. I'll come back to you, Councillor Hunt.
2 questions. Referring to the window, is there any danger that the change to the shop front will actually endanger the window, which does stick out a bit? And the second thing is, I'm glad to hear that I was going to ask a question about, that's a question, and I was going to ask a question about disabled access, and you have confirmed, I think, that we can include a condition about wheelchair access and the door will be wide enough and the threshold will be low enough. Is that the case?
Yes, that's the case. So in terms of your first question about the signage, I think that would be covered by building.
Signage?
Or about the bay.
I was asking about whether
the
works can be done to the shop front without endangering the window above.
That would be a matter for building regulations. And then you're correct on your second question. You're correct that it would be reasonable to impose a condition that's ensured that there was level access to the shop.
Thank you.
Councillor Hunt, back to you, and then
Yeah.
Councillor Mason.
So to round off the business with the bay window, is it right that they could just leave it until it rots and then falls down? Well, I'm not, obviously it's going to fall down, obviously there'd be enforcement action, but they could just leave it till it becomes nothing and rots away. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, there are limits to what the planning system can do, Chair, and no matter how laudable or desirable, we can't compel people to maintain their buildings.
Councillor Hugh Mason.
Again, just for clarity, this application, does it have any implications from the plaster work which is on the shop sign and slightly lower than the shop sign in the column between the two former properties, which quite clearly has deteriorated? A, does this planning application have any relevance to it? And B, could we put anything in for the preservation of that plaster work, which, as a condition, which would be able to be sustained if there were an objection?
Can we see the image again of that bit that Councillor Mason is referring to? Thank you.
Do you want to look at the elevation first?
Yeah. Alongside the words castle stores, you have plaster work in between the two words of castle stores, the two,
this area,
that area there,
Yep.
and the column running down.
So, these pilasters are historic features in the shop front. So they're in poor state of repair, as you can see here. They're still retained within the unauthorised shop front, as here you can see there and there. So the plan refers to their restoration. Again, this is where we need to ensure that we can we're sticking to works that need planning permission, so there's no works proposed to the pilasters, and again, our ability to insist that they be restored is limited, simply because the applicant has applied for planning permission to change from this. We have to be, it's only those works that need planning permission in terms of the shop front. Those features are shown for retention, and again, we have it's the same advice, Chair, about the long-term maintenance of these. The applicant is here today and has obviously heard the comments made about those features and their significance and their need to be looked after. But as a planning committee and the local planning authority, our ability to force someone to maintain these is limited.
I'm going to Councillor Smythe, then Councillor Cordy, then Councillor Hunt again.
It's another very quick question, which I forgot before. In one of the pictures, we see a cash point. I can't find it at the moment. It's on your slides, I think. Is there a proposal to continue with the cash point, and in which case, where would it go in the new plans?
That has been removed. When the unauthorised shop front was put in, that cash machine was removed. So that's not retained, and it's not shown on the proposed plans. So it's not.
So it's not there, and it's not going to be removed. That's fine. I think
correct.
we have to be very careful with the cash points since the closure of the banks in Southsea.
And if they were to put in a cash point in the future, that would be something that would require planning permission, which would be considered separately.
Councillor Cordy.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to go back to the bay window again, if I may. we say that we can't impose any building to be done or maintenance to be done to that window, but at some stage that will deteriorate to such an extent that it will pose a danger to people using that shop. Is there no point that we can come in and say this needs to be done?
Not through planning. At some point, it may there may be that it breaches a dangerous structure, and it can be reported to building regs. But in terms of the planning side of things, I'm afraid no. The advice is the same. We can't compel this ongoing maintenance of a property. These are matters for the owner to look after their own asset.
Thank you.
Councillor Hunt again.
Since if we were to approve the what you're recommending today, the pilasters are there, so they would have to comply with the drawings, wouldn't they? You know, they couldn't just suddenly let the pilasters go. They are there. They need to be in. They need to be in the final build.
Yes, they're retained. They're shown for retention. As I say, I'm coming back to the point. Sorry to be a bit of a stuck record. So if they're shown for retention, they haven't been removed as part of the unauthorised shopfront. So they're still there. They still the plan will keep them there. So the historic features are retained. But what we can't do, what we don't have the power to do, is compel someone to carry out all of the works in a planning application. Then that's the clear advice given by government. So if there's a desire or a note within the plan that says, I'll restore these, I'll paint these, etc., that's ideal. That's what we want to see. We want to see them maintained. But it's our ability, what we can do. There's a limit within the scope of what we can do in this planning application. In fact, what we want to do is grant the consent that shows the plans, and we want the applicant to undertake all of those works, but we can't force them to do that. That's the issue, Chair.
All right, very, very lastly, Chair, then. So, is it unreasonable? I think that's what you said earlier. It's unreasonable to put on a condition saying that the pilasters must be retained forever into the future type thing.
It's the difference between maintain and retain. So the planning permission will retain those features. They cannot remove those features. They would need our consent to remove the features. We don't want to see those features retained. They're historic. They're contributing to the conservation area. They're a rarity. They're a positive contribution to the conservation area. So it's retain we can do, maintain we can't.
Yes, I see that. So, you know, the truth is, the plain fact is, from what you're saying, and from my understanding, is that they could just ignore them into the future and they just wither away.
There are limits to what we can do. Having said that, you're seeing a proposal to make a significant investment in the shopfront with a timber shopfront. So we would hope from that you know, a desire to maintain and keep the structures there would flow from that, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any more questions before we go on to comments? Another question, Councillor Mason. Oh, comment. Councillor Mason.
Since this is a very modest application, which involves merely the removal of non-conforming windows and the replacement in exactly the same space with windows which would meet our standards, I think that we should approve this, and so I propose the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Hunt. Oh,
yeah, thank you.
I think he did get in there just before you.
Yeah. So I'm going to second that, if that's all right. And I think, you know, the saying is a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, isn't it? But it is a sorry tale, I have to say. You know, it's really important. And shop owners need to understand that one of the reasons they do so well in Castle Road and perhaps further along the seafront is the visitor economy. And we've seen it with Cell GP, we've seen it with the Kite Festival, and we've been building and building and building and building so that trades and businesses benefit from the visitor economy. Part of the visitor economy is the attractiveness of our conservation areas, particularly Castle Road, which, you know, is very important. And I have to say, I have to thank Mr. Brazier and the Castle Road Association for trying to work with the applicants to try and get a resolution to this matter. But it shouldn't really have ended up here, truthfully. It should have been done without it having to be forced to be done. And of course, it will strain the relationship in the road too. But I think it's so important for shop owners to understand that these features, they need to be retained because people enjoy to come and look at them. And one of the things you do when you come to a city, you want to look at its history, you don't look along the bottom, you look up. You look up and you see these Edwardian features and Victorian features. The only thing I'm sorry about from the pictures is I see, you know, I think a variety of different materials. I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but I see UPVC windows, outward opening UPVC windows in wooden frames, and outward opening, there's one there which is, it looks like UPVC sliding windows. It's such a mixture. And I think this is because the law is so grey around this kind of stuff, as we've heard today. So it is very difficult. But you can go to places like Bath and Brighton and so on, they still have the same problems with maintaining the integrity of a conservation area which has been gone about today. The question that I'm really concerned about is the use of, I think you said, Mr. Shukla said mahogany was going to be used. Now, mahogany is a material that we're, you know, concerned about because of the rainforests and so on. So I don't know whether this is mahogany that is one of the sustainable mahoganies, but you know, we shouldn't be encouraging the use of mahogany. It's not a good thing, but that's for them to decide upon, not me. So I'm seconding the report. And I beg your pardon to the planning officers. I mean, if it's mahogany, what they do, end up varnishing it, because that wouldn't look so good either. You know, that would be out of character, I think.
Is that just a question that you want?
Well, it's kind
answered?
of, you know. I'm sure the details will be agreed between the planning officers and them eventually. But the use of mahogany, it is strong and long-lasting, I know, and the Victorians used it a lot. But we're wiser nowadays.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hunt. Are there any other comments? Councillor Mason.
There are very strict restrictions on the import of red mahogany. The yellow mahoganies are more freely imported, and I assume that it will be the yellow mahogany which would be used for this building.
Thank you for that extra piece of information. Can I just double check before we go to the vote that would the condition around the disabled access be added to this? Is that as part of where it says conditional permission?
We've no objection to that, Chair, if Councillor Mason wants to add that to the move.
So I'm just checking with Councillor Mason whether he's happy for that to be added as a condition.
Yes, happy with that.
Okay. Okay, so with that extra condition around disabled access, we have a proposal in front of us by Councillor Hugh Mason, seconded by Councillor Lee Hunt, to move officers' recommendations with those conditions set out in the paper, plus the additional one around disabled access. Can I see those in favour of that? 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 8.
I have to say, Chair, you're bang on with your timings today. It's 12:30 exactly.
I planned it completely.
All right, I have to go. I'm terribly sorry.
So, any against? No. Abstained? No. So that is officer's recommendation. That is carried. And conditional planning permission is given. Councillor Simpson.
As we're losing a couple, could I request a comfort break for
Yes,
5 minutes?
let's have a 5-minute comfort break. Good idea, because I think we're about to lose 2 people.
Chair, am I the second?
Okay, we're back. Two more agenda items, so we'll move straight to... Oh, we've lost... Councillor Hunt has had to go, as he said at the beginning of the meeting, so he's gone, but we are still... Sorry, I was getting rid of Councillor Candlish sooner than he needs to go, so we are still 7 of us at the moment. Right, agenda item 6. And there's no more deputations, so agenda item 6 is over to... Eva is presenting.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the application on 250 Fratton Road is an application for prior approval for the change of use from existing office unit to a dwelling house. This application is brought to you because the council is a landowner for this site. I must stress that prior approval process is different to a full planning application process that members will be familiar with. Prior approval allows applicants to change the use of a building from commercial use, such as shops or offices in this case, to residential use. And this process assesses specific impacts only, and these are set out in the officer report on pages 38 to 39. And no other considerations can be taken into account. So that is important to bear in mind. The application site is a vacant mid-terrace property, last used as an office and originally built as a dwelling house. The property is located to the north of Fratton District Centre on the eastern side of Fratton Road, in the section of the road between Clive Road and Alva Road, diagonally across from Carnegie Library to the north of the application site is a public house, Trafalgar Arms. It's separated by another dwelling house. And to the rear of the site is the Fratton Community Centre. The application site is within an area with good transport links, easily accessible amenities and green space. The property does not have any off-street parking, but it has a rear yard, and the block plan indicates bin and bike storage would be accommodated in the rear yard. You can see the red edge has an interesting shape. You will see in the photographs why that is the way it's set out, and the applicant's proposing to include a fence there. So the existing and proposed plans now, as you can see, there are currently 3 rooms on the ground floor, 3 rooms on the first floor, so that's the remainder from when it was used as an office. And the proposed layout is to have 2 bedrooms upstairs, a bathroom, utility room, kitchen, dining, and living room on the ground floor. There are no elevation drawings submitted with this application because no alterations to the elevations can be considered under prior approval. So here you can see the front of the property as it is, and I think we should have pictures from the inside. So these would be the proposed bedrooms, and we've got some pictures from the rear of the property. And as I said, no external alterations are being proposed. And you can see there's a staircase leading to the Fratton Community Centre. There will be a fence according to the proposal. And you might see there is a window directly overlooking the application site from the community centre. But as I mentioned at the beginning, overlooking or loss of privacy is not something we can look into when considering a prior approval application. So that would be it, I think. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Yeah, just to emphasise what you said, that this is for prior approval, so some of the questions that I might have about the size of the wall and overlooking all the rest of it are not relevant to this. This is prior approval for a change of use from offices to a dwelling house. Questions first. Any questions? I think it was very comprehensive report, thank you. Comments?
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation here. I understand that we can't and are not able to question all the time, but anything that brings a unused office where there are already vacant properties in Fratton Road, office and commercial, into use as a dwelling must be welcome. So I recommend the officer's recommendation.
Sorry, Peter Candlish got in just before you. Mary, again, you need to get in there quicker. Peter.
I was just going to support the proposal. So.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got proposal with Councillor Smythe, seconded by Councillor Candlish. Any other proposals? No, we'll move straight to a vote then. So that all those in favour to move officer's recommendation for prior approval for change of use. So none against and no abstention. So that's all 7 of us. And yes, so officers' recommendations are approved. Thank you very much. If only they were all that quick and easy. Right, so we'll push on to the last agenda item today before us, which is agenda item 7, which is 1 Rochester Road. It's seeking planning permission, and I believe the reason it's here is because the person seeking planning permission is one of our fellow members. I will hand over for the report again. Busy.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I think we can go straight to the location plan since you've introduced the application. So the application site is an end of terrace residential property on the northern side of Rochester Road, and it is within the Rochester Road Conservation Area. The application site has a frontage onto St. Augustine Road at the western end of Rochester Road. There is an existing vehicular access at the property fronting St. Augustine Road and a garage at the rear of the property. However, the existing width of both the timber gate and the garage appear too narrow to accommodate most modern vehicles. So the existing piers are 2.3 metres high, and the proposal seeks to increase the height by 30 centimetres to 2.6 metres high. The existing gate is 2.4 metres wide, and the proposal seeks to widen it by 50 centimetres to 2.9 metres. The proposal is for the existing brick piers surrounding the gate to be raised and the vehicular access to be widened. The proposal also includes installation of a new bifold black timber gate. The increased height of the pillar and gates will be visible from front bay window of 144 St. Augustine Road. So that's the property that you can see now on the screen. There will be some photographs later where we can appreciate that. There is considered to be a minor impact to the outlook from this neighbour as a result. However, the front bay will retain an acceptable outlook otherwise, and any impacts from the increased pillar are not considered to warrant refusal. The site already benefits from vehicular access. Yes, and as such, the proposal would result in no change to the highway safety. Provided it is demonstrated that bifold gates open inwards to the site when in operation and there is sufficient space within the site to accommodate a vehicle. A suitably worded condition is recommended in the officer report to ensure the works are carried out in compliance with the highways comments. So that's condition number 3, because as you can see in the floor plans now, the gates seem to open outside, and also we never received plans showing the amount of space within the rear yard to be sure there is sufficient space not to have any vehicle overhang. And the photographs here show the bay window I mentioned earlier at 144 Augustine Road, St. Augustine Road, sorry, and as I said, the impact on the living conditions on those occupiers is considered acceptable, and the proposal is considered to preserve the character of the conservation area and is also considered acceptable in townscape terms. With the condition I've mentioned earlier relating to the highway safety, it is considered acceptable and is recommended for permission subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you for the report. Any questions? Councillor Simpson.
Just to confirm all the committee here and for all the free people that's probably watching online. Can we just confirm from the plan inspectors, the only reason this application is here is because it's for a fellow councillor, and that if it wasn't for a fellow councillor, it wouldn't be in planning committee and you would have gone with your recommendation?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Smythe and Councillor Mason.
Members will recall other times when we've approved this kind of application, and we have been able to put on a condition to make sure that the hard standing behind the access and the walls that are proposed, which should be conditioned to be permeable, so that we're not adding to the amount of impermeable surface water flow into the drainage, which is what causes the water company to not be able to cope with heavy rainfall. I'm advised that this would be acceptable. It's part of the sort of thing we talk about regularly in the Labour group in general terms, the trying to increase the amount of area that's not under impermeable concrete surfaces. So I'd like a condition added that the surface of the backyard should be permeable and not drain into the main sewage, if that's possible. Is that possible, is my question. We have done it before.
So it's not a part of this proposal, and I think we've seen at the last photograph, there is already hard standing in the rear yard, so it wouldn't seem appropriate to add a condition like this.
We have done it in those circumstances, and we have put conditions on, and they have been complied with, because I've walked down the road and they have been complied with, and I think it would be in this case.
Chair, I think in this particular instance it wouldn't be reasonable for us to impose that, as no proposed works in terms of hard surfacing within the site are shown. If they were actually doing that, then yes, it would be reasonable, but as they're not, it simply works to the gates and the piers, and it wouldn't be reasonable in this instance.
I think also coming back to Councillor Simpson's point, it wouldn't be here if that person wasn't an elective member. So imposing a condition where the work's not even, well, that's not what we're considering, probably. It's a desirable thing. I absolutely understand that, but I'm happy to go with officer's recommendation that we can't impose that as a condition.
Thank you, I understand. That's why I asked a question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
I'm looking at the height of the pillars. How much is added to the existing height? And am I right in that the proposed height will be exactly the same as those to the entrance door to the property on the right-hand side of the picture?
So the proposal is to add 30 centimetres to the height of the piers. And I think it will be just a little bit higher, very narrow margin.
From an aesthetic point of view, I think it is an improvement.
Thank you. Councillor Candice.
Well, just listening to the debate, I'm happy to propose the recommendation. No one seems to be against it.
So we have a proposal in front of us by Councillor Candish, seconded by Councillor Hugh Mason, to move officer's recommendation to give conditional permission subject to the conditions stated in the report. All those in favour? So no one against, so that's all 7 of us in favour. So officer's recommendations are approved. Thank you very much, everyone. Definitely a meeting of 2 halves in terms of length. I didn't judge that so well, but thanks very much for your questions and comments, and see you next time.